Hello and welcome to another walk along, this time in Monster Hunter Wilds, and we are going all the way from the Windward Plains to the Gathering Hub. Let's get started. First nice vista we get looking out into the desert sand dunes. Monster Hunter Wilds does a great job of making it feel like there's more beyond the playable area in the game. And we'll see that reflected in some of the dioramas they've constructed later throughout other areas. Here we can see a wedge beetle. These were introduced in Monster Hunter World and were quite notable in the Coral Highlands, probably to the dismay of many hunters as they would have to chase various monsters all the way up to the top of the Coral Highland, though some were unaware that you could use the glider mantle to get up there quickly. And while they serve the same purpose as just getting around faster, though I feel like they're placed in a lot better situations where they never feel like they're annoying, and sometimes they give you combative advantages, which felt a little more ignored in World. Off to the side here, we can see Raidow's Arena. This arena is really cool, as this sort of electric effect going out for the whole entire thing over all the fulgurite crystals. And in the arena, there are grounding rocks that you can pick up to help clear the electricity to make it safer when fighting Raidow in his last standoff. I have quite a bit of 14 viewers, so I'm sure they'll be happy to see a Chocobo skin for the Sacred, as well as Little Omega. They just can't help themselves but explore every dimension possible. This game has an insane amount of walk animation diversity. As you see, when we go throughout this journey, we'll be going through sand, water, up and down hills, and the amount of attention to detail for these animations is quite high, more than most games I can think of. And you're not even really supposed to walk around that much in this game. Most of the time will be spent on Sacred or in high combat where you wouldn't be able to really pay attention to things like these. Here we can see a Wiggly Lychee. These were also implemented in World and give you a great stamina buff. Here we can see a Talioth, a very aggressive small bird werven. Even with Intimidator on, they still go after me every time they see me. These are one of the earlier monsters they showed off when this game was first coming out, and they have such this distinct look to their jaw. Almost makes me wish we had a large monster version of them roaming about as an early fight, much like we got with very many of the previous Monster Hunter games, where we would fight a pack leader of sorts, which would have fit the theming well of Monster Hunter Wilds, introducing various packs hunting the player, like with Doshaguma. Here we can see an old decrepit lightning rod that is useful during the lightning storms. Though the frequency of lightning during storms isn't really enough to cause much of a threat, as more of an accident on occasion. These have a very similar silhouette to some of the ancient ruins we'll see at the latter half of this walk. One major noticeable graphical change they did coming from World into Wilds is they implemented a new cloud system. And now it's more procedural in how these clouds automatically form instead of having a fixed cloud sky like we did in World. I think there's something a bit more artistic about the previous cloud system that I find more appealing. Though the trade-off is now we get a lot more dynamic shadows cast by the clouds because of it. So it's a bit of a give and take on what you prefer. The oasis here creates a lot of really cool moments to observe some of the larger monsters and how they interact with the environments. If you take a closer look at the bees in these nests, they're just flat images. They do a really good job of making these feel like they're believable 3D assets roaming around and swirling around here. If you try to track one while looking at one, you'll see that no matter where you move, it'll always be facing your direction in its exact pose. Now we're going to be taking a brief trip down into the Groundwater Vein. A thing this game does really well is there are a lot of areas where you do not participate in combat. It simply becomes a place to gather resources, including rare ones, and helps add to the immersion that this world isn't just about fighting, but it's living. Here we can see our first instance of the Landspine crossing through the Forbidden Land. We'll be getting to see a better look at it in some other locations. Emerging from the underwater location, we are greeted with this exposed sand cave. All the sand leaking down from above. There is a location up here where Balahara dive up and down to attack various prey, and you will often end up chasing Balahara to here as their final location to fight them. Now that we've emerged, you can kind of see we've ended up looping from where we originally were. Up to the left here, we can see where we started. And past all those sand dunes is where the oasis that we were at. I thought this Doshaguma looked a little large, and I was correct. It is a large gold crown. Thankfully, we do not have to hunt all the gold crowns. I did that around the launch of the game when it was a lot easier to do. Even now, though, it's still a lot easier than World, with the implementation of the binoculars indicating the size of the monster. As we pass by it, you'll get to see just how huge the monsters can get in this game. Not something you really think about when the camera is more zoomed out and away from the character. We got lucky here. We get to see the Talioth interact with a large monster. Some Bulaqchi. There's a funny thing about these little insects is there is a setting in the game for arachnophobia. It turns Bulaqchi into slimes, of all things. But it does not turn the large monster spiders into anything less arachnid. So, if you have an arachnophobia, this isn't going to help much. And strangely, these aren't very arachnid looking compared to the large monster spiders we run into later, as well as some of the endemic life. They also have a grab attack, which, when they're a slime, is a rather unfortunate accident for those who have seen it. Here we can see a rough lizard. In the flavor text for these, it describes them as having unique adipose tissues under their jaws, which is a body fat. Though all the ones I've captured don't seem to be very distinctive. Maybe I've just gotten unlucky with the ones I've captured, as this isn't one I often grab when I see it. As we climb up here, we'll get a look at all these Fulgurite spines sticking outwards through the cliffside. And now that we are at the top, we get probably the best view in the Windward Plains, as well as being able to see these Fulgurite geodes scattered about, which can be used as a trap. Here we can see this nesting location for some Baunos. You can see they come here quite often based on the poop streaks lining the various cliff faces in this location. There must have been a large monster or something nearby because they are quite agitated right now. Here we can see this crystal cave, the location for a camp. The crystals in here are blue, much like the fulgurite crystals, so I assume they are the same, though that begins to question how such a large geode came to be in this location from the thunder strikes that caused it. We won't be going here right now, as this location is only accessible by sacreds, so we're going to head back down the other way. Here we can see the model for one of the collectible fulgurite crystals. It's cool to see that they went through the efforts of modeling out the fulgurite crystals when they could have easily just as used the generic mining crystal node. Shows the importance of this material itself. Here we can see these thunderbugs. Unlike the bees, these are full 3D models. Must be quite taxing on the engine. Here, and with a lot of the things we will be encounter, when you are just walking along instead of taking a sacred or fighting monsters, you will hear a lot of different noises and sound effects that you typically would not hear. Now that we are hitting nighttime, we get to see the skybox and its starry night. You can see this landlight shrimp. The reason we find these shrimp on the various fulgurite crystals is because they go to these to feed on organic matter trapped within the rocks. They secrete a liquid that helps break down the rocks so they can eat the organisms within inside it. It's funny they call these shrimp because looking at them, they feel more like a sort of lobster or a crab than necessarily a shrimp. These are some of the first endemic life the player will encounter once they get out of the tutorial section of the game. So it makes for a very bizarre first impression of the world of wilds. We finally made it to the main base camp for the Windward Plains. Right away, we're greeted with the merchant as well as the argosy for this location. The argosy, after the implementation of the Gathering Hub updates, ended up being a great place for players to obtain barrel vouchers in a reasonable pace until they later implemented more ways to obtain them easier. As we walk through here, we will see just how much effort they put into making this place feel very alive. Even in contrast next to Kanafa Village, which is a more permanent settlement, this place just is bustling with energy. I like how they handled the palicos in this game. We can see Panini walking off here, just doing their own thing and helping around the various camps and villages. They feel a lot more like their own person in this game compared to the previous titles where they felt like your little NPC who occasionally heals you or helps you fight a bad guy. They just have way more personality, kind of similar to Cha-Cha and Kayamba from some of the older titles. We're approaching the monster research camp. There was a funny bug in one of the patches where the fish would act like normal fish and just start flying off into the land instead of staying within their little buckets. As far as I know, this bug has been fixed, but it was funny to see it when it was happening. In this location, you can talk to one of the NPCs here to open a model viewer for the endemic life that you have captured in the game. It's too bad we didn't see this feature implemented for small and large monsters, as it would have been nice to see them in a model viewer as well. Well, it looks like he's heard from the others again. When are they going to give this kid something to do? And that'll be the end of that camp. We're gonna make our way to the transitional area from Windward Plains to the Scarlet Forest. Taking a little look at this bitterbug here. These have been in the game series since the first game, I want to say. They have been a staple of the series. And though what they end up combining with has changed slightly throughout the time, they have always been there. So it's nice to see them get a little love with some of these animations that you just might not see if you simply grab and run, which is even easier to do now since you can grapple them as opposed to having to walk up to them and observe them before crushing them into whatever fine paste you want for your devices. In the distance here, we can see a Doshaguma. I intended on shooing it away, but a Seregios landed and ended up doing the work for me. So we get to see a nice little fight occur. We will, however, be sending the Seregios away, as I want to observe these Ceratonoth herds. Up in this tree, we can see a few Emstrigians as well as their nest. These endemic life have some very well done lore to them. While you see them here nesting, they do migrate between the Windward Plains and the Scarlet Forest, depending on the weather conditions that are occurring. Originally, when the Emstrigians were first seen in a trailer for the game, people thought these were baby Pukes. Unfortunately, they are their own thing. At least they're cute, though, right? As we approach this herd, we can see a male Ceratonoth. The large spikes on their back are used to help protect the herds during the storms that occur, acting as lightning rods. So when you see this weather occurring, they will all huddle around the males for protection. Now we're gonna take a little walk through these Ceratonoth herds, so please enjoy. These obnoxious little birds on top of the Ceratonoths are Noth peckers. I could see many people being annoyed by them, but I find them adorable. These birds are perched on top of these Ceratonoths as a symbiotic relationship with them. The Noth peckers will help get rid of old loose scales, as well as eating various critters that are on the backs of these Ceratonoths. We will be hiding from these Talioths as we want to take a little observation on the Gagios up ahead. These Gagios are little crocodiles. If you, depending when you come here, you can see them attacking Ceratonoths, attacking some of the younger Ceratonoths as they find these easy prey. And even here yet, we can see one taking a nap, which is very cute. A lot of the monsters throughout the series take naps, and they have adorable little snoring noises if you approach close enough. Some Dalphidons passing by here, though it seems they forgot their child. As we approach the Scarlet Forest, we get a peek at the river where all the flooding water from the forest is pouring into the Windward plains. We bumped into some wind rustlers at the entrance of this transitional area. These little reptiles are scavengers, and they don't seem too bothered by people as well, since you can see them darting around Kunafa village. As they are scavengers, there's quite a lot for them to eat at this location. These transitional areas that we will see between the various locations serve as a hidden loading screen. Since this game was on console, it needed as much help as it could to get between these areas loading. When we're on foot, you will notice that they are very large. I guess they never expected somebody to walk through these, though they have no issue letting you do so. So there won't be much to say till we reach the Scarlet Forest. Enjoy the walk. We've arrived at the forest, and with a little drizzle on top. I hope you like storms, because we will be seeing them, and I love storms, so this worked out well for me. right before the entrance of the main camp, we get a small taste of these reds scattered throughout the early areas of the Scarlet Forest. They make for an amazing contrast between the green floras and the red waters. We're going to take a little peek around this camp. Here we can see Kanya, best girl, obviously. And if you're lucky, you can sometimes catch her fishing with a Wudwud here. They make for the adorable fishing pair. Up behind Kanya, we can see a smoke shroud gecko. The bioluminescent parts on the smoke shroud gecko are used as an escape tool. They can detach parts of themselves in order to use as a distraction for any predators that may be after them. This is not unlike real lizards and geckos that we see in our world, where they can often detach their tail as a means to escape from their predators. Though the consequences in real life are a lot more harsh than they are in a video game. While many species of geckos and lizards can grow back their tail, this often causes permanent changes to how their tail functions, and sometimes they can't even detach it more than once. So if you ever see one in real life, try not to scare it too hard. Right outside the campsite, we get to see this colony of leaf lugger ants. The leaves they are carrying have a fungi on them that they are bringing back to the nest in the means to cultivate food for the colony. This is kind of a funny twist on the trope we often see with, and I'm probably going to butcher this, Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, or the zombie ant fungus that we see depicted in popular media, most notably in the Last of Us series. But in this situation, we are seeing them consume the fungi instead of being consumed by. We've run into an Arkveld here, an extremely aggressive monster yet again. They aren't giving us the most kind lineup of monsters in this location in our travels so far. Now, give this guy a little listen when we get closer. It has these very bizarre rock-like sounds of boulders like grinding together. Now we're entering the nest of Barina, as you may have noticed in some of the earlier areas as we entered the Scarlet Forest. There was red sap leaking out of many of the trees. This is the cause for a lot of the waters in the earlier areas to be this red tint, as well as a source of how Barina creates its toxin, and we get this reddish hue to all of Barina's webs and florets on its abdomen. And as you go farther upstream, you'll notice that the waters have become more clear. A nice attention to detail in the location. Here on this weaving, rooty tree is a location that only sacred can traverse. Though when you are up on these treetops, there are ways to get up there through means of vines without the need of a sacred. Here we got some dapper winged birds. We won't be seeing too much of them pretty soon as the storm will be starting. Just like birds in real life, the males are quite more flamboyant looking than the females in their appearance, as a means to attract females to mate. Here we can see all these massive Venus flytraps. Why are they so big, you ask? Well, they seem to have a taste for birds. Sorry, little guy. Buried underneath the ground here are some floral shell crabs. Much like real crabs, they burrow under the ground in order to hide from predators. Though these ones get some cute adornments of flora growing on top of their head to help them hide. We'll be seeing a few more up the stream as well. As we go up this river, we will get to see just how difficult it is to walk through these deeper waters. If you're ever in a fight in this location, you're wondering why you keep getting hits, this might be a reason why. Hatching another Doshaguma here. To the left of here is where the Doshaguma will nest when they are weak. This one appears to be hunting for fish, and we will be hiding as Doshaguma are very territorial, even when it's just one of them. We get a notification for a turf war. Part of what makes this world feel so alive is a lot of things are occurring throughout the map without the player's input. So even though we can't see this fight going on, the other large monsters are going about their business as usual. Probably a contributing factor to why this game has and still runs poorly for quite a lot of people. If you are curious to what we are running at, this is on max graphic settings, ray tracing at max, which if you do want ray tracing on to walk around, I recommend putting on low, as there isn't really much of a difference that you will see from high to low. There is, but it's not enough to really impact what you're looking at. With this, we are also using no upscalers, and we are not using any frame drain. Now we'll be heading over to this interactable dam with World and Beyond. They slowly started to make the world itself a lot more interactable than just the player interacting with the monsters in the location. It really helps increase the immersion when going in these areas and not just feel like you're running around in an arena. Here we can see an ancient Wyverian coin, and if you observe it closer, it is fully modeled, not just a glowing bit on the ground. Upon observing it, you will notice that it has a striking similarity to the logo for Monster Hunter Wilds. You can also see this in various locations in Wyverian territories among banners and other objects. We're just gonna yoink this little meat from this Wudwud. Is he happy or is he mad at us? I can't really tell. Wudwuds aren't exactly the best at communicating. It wouldn't be a video game without a secret waterfall, and here we have just one. Deep throughout this waterfall, we will find a camp as well as a watering hole which we can fish from. In this fishing hole, there is an extremely rare fish as well. Even here we can say another ancient relic from the past, this pottery, which is very intricate, or something most players aren't going to think twice about picking up. And lucky us, we did manage to have the Petricanth spawn. A very rare fish and probably a pain in the side for many collectors. Its name is somewhat of a pun, being petrification and camp of fish. This fish is, in its lore, is thought to be extinct, and it reflects that in how rare it is to catch. We've seen this one in a few Monster Hunter games as well. Now I promised storms, and you're getting one. So I hope you like them as much as I do. earlier in the level, you may have missed it, but one of these glowing trees was collapsed in the forest. Are these related to the Lifespine, or are they their own thing? We never really get a clear answer. I like to assume they have a similar function to the Lifespine, even if they are not the same entity. If you do go out of bounds out to these, there's not really much to see. When I saw Arkveld pop up here, I was kind of hoping it was going to be Oofduna, but sadly it is just an Arkveld jump scare. Here in this arena as well, you can see a few wedge beetles scattered about that allow you to not only dodge some of Oofduna's attacks, but do some jump attacks as well. Here we can see a night flower, though it is not bloomed right now. This is a special flower that only blooms during a full moon, believe it or not. This flower gives you an item called night flower pollen, and it is a very valuable item for trading at the various tradable merchants. When the game first launched, this item ended up getting abused to a degree so highly by people forcing it to spawn that Capcom eventually patched it to make it more difficult to exploit obtaining this pollen. Though the reality is this only really affected console players, because if a PC player really wanted to, they could just dump the max amount of this into their inventory. Taking a little observation on this Thunder Crest, it almost looks like a nut or a cracked open geode. It's hard to really say exactly what it is or why there are piles of them outside of video game, but it's nice to take a closer look at them regardless. with this storm going, we get to see how intense the flooded waters get. It makes me think maybe at one point in development, they made all these waters considered deep when it was storming like this to make the terrain difficult. Though I imagine with how much quality of life they packed into this game, that would have been seen as a negative in their eyes. We're going to take a small detour up to this Wudwud Camp and take a look around. Here you can see this Wudwud is nestled nice and cozy in this spot. There is a location in Area 6 at the Flowering Rocks Camp. If you cross the water, I believe, or maybe there's a vine somewhere, you can eventually find a hidden path where there's not only sometimes a rare material, but you can also see some more Wudwuds nesting in little sleeping bags. Now we're going to go up to the very top. While this is mostly known now, when you go here at night, after some certain conditions have been met, you can occasionally find the Wudwuds up here having a banquet. During this banquet, they will trade with you various things, as well as grill stuff on the campfire for you, leading to some unique consumables that you can only get here. This used to be quite the secret in the community, but eventually, for some reason, Capcom decided to make an entire quest line tied to this. I feel like sometimes maybe it's best if things like this do stay secret in the game, as it creates this fun moment for the community to engage with each other and share secrets they found throughout the world. It makes it just that more magical when you get to discover something instead of being pointed towards it. Under this waterfall, we're going to take a quick peek into Lagiacrus's den, though sadly they are not here. It was funny to see the community's reaction to when Lagiacrus got its official pronunciation, as people tended to pronounce it in all sorts of different ways. My pronunciation of it ended up being very close to how they pronounce it, which I found very funny. The localization devs must have had a similar thought to how to get to the pronunciation as I did. I ended up searching a bunch of Latin origin words related to parts of it, and some of them ended up leading to words related to clouds and storms, various things that in my head I associate with Lagiacrus. Though I assume most people, when they pronounced it, it was whatever they pronounced it when they were a young little kid and were just kind of throwing stuff at the wall. It will be interesting to see what they do in the future, if anything, with the water mechanics that they implemented in the laggy fight for wilds. Personally, I felt as though they went a bit too soft on the mechanics, but what they have there is a great baseline for future water fighting mechanics. Unfortunately, the devs ended up implementing a version of laggy which has zero water involved in the fight, so that ends up being the go-to way to farm it as a result, meaning once you've done the fight once, you will rarely ever see the water segments unless you go out of your way to do it. There won't be too much to say on our way there until we get to the next transitional area. On our way, right before we get there, we get all these honeycombs scattered about against these wallings. This location ends up being a place for Lala to come to and wreak havoc upon. Now we've made it to the transitional area from the Scarlet Forest to the Oilwell Basin. When I ended up going through this, I ended up finding a funny bug, or I guess it's probably more of an oversight than a bug, but the weather sound effects from the previous location will stay playing even when visually there is no storm playing through most of the loading area, because it hasn't started fully loading the oil well ambiance noises. You will see this happen in the next transition area as well. Now we've arrived at the Oilwell Basin. We get to see all these very natural looking smokestacks protruding from various locations, releasing who knows what kinds of fumes, though our hunter seems to have no issue breathing this location. In the distance on this cliff, you can see some Harpios perching. More or less a flying swordfish. Not something you would want to be in the way of when they're hunting for various fish. Rathian? I'll never understand Capcom's obsession with the rafts. In many of the games, we've gotten well over 6 different types in a single instant. While it is a cool monster, I feel its oversaturation has made its presence less intriguing, and not one I ever look forward to fighting in the various titles because of this. Get ready for a bombardment of fauna to observe. They were just going full safari here for some reason. Crawling through this oil, depending on the season when you're here, sometimes this oil can turn into this sort of sulfur-like looking liquid, though it doesn't seem to have any differential effect on the player, as interesting as that could have been. See a chill mantle bug off in the distance there. On this walk along, we won't be going anywhere too hot, so we won't end up needing it. In the distance here, we can see the Ancient Forge. It's a strange name to call this device, as it seems more like a weapon based on how we used it than necessarily a place for forging. I can't imagine why you would need spikes at the end of your forge's emergency exhaust ports, let alone for it to jut out so violently. We won't be visiting the village on this trip either, and instead going more directly towards our location. Here we'll just be walking for a little bit, so enjoy that as well. Here we can see a blink angler, a anglerfish that has become semi-aquatic and now hunts the various floating sparkler jellies you will find throughout this section of the Oilwell Basin. Here we can see a pink landlight shrimp, and they also have some interesting world building lore to how they function and live in this universe. They choose these very specific locations near these gas vents to gather various particles and other excretions from these, in which gather various microbes that they can feed on. And the reason for how they glow might be a result of these various microscopic critters that they eat. In the distance here, we can spot a Cranodoth. I assume it's supposed to be a pun on cranium, so maybe the pronunciation is supposed to be Cranodoth, even though it's spelled with a K, given how much of a focus on their design is on their head. These things are just as aggressive as the Talioths, but a lot more annoying to deal with if you choose to engage with them. This raft gave me quite the jump. I thought I was about to get pummeled over, and I do not have moxie, so I probably would have been very close to dying. Here we can see a few pallbugs, a small scavenger creature, a small scavenging endemic life that you can see in every map in the game. When you kill a monster, you can sometimes even catch them snacking on the corpses that get left behind. Our little friend in the distance, or maybe I shouldn't call him that, don't want to give him any ideas. I like my bones where they are. Here we can see one of the, I assume, cores of the land spine. I don't know how you would describe these things. Maybe these are more seeds or places where the land spine stores a mass amount of energy. In the ruins of Wyveria, you can find an even larger one deeper inside. And here's the one hard loading screen in the various locales that you can travel to throughout the game. I'm not sure why they decided to make this a hard loading screen when the other locale transitional areas do not have this. Maybe there was some performance issue that they couldn't figure out in time. It's really hard to say, as I feel like those transitional areas do a really good job of giving that feeling of immersion and size to the world of the Forbidden Lands. The only other hard loading screens for areas are the training area, the arena, and the gathering hub. Now we've arrived at the Iceshard Cliffs. At the beginning of this, we'll see a lot of water because of how close we are to the volcanic locations of the Oilwell Basin. But as we make our way farther and farther up, the place will become very cold very fast. Over here we can see an enwebbed Gypceros due to the axe of Nerscylla. The Nerscylla and Gypceros throughout the various games have always been prey and predator to each other, and that's reflected not only in when we see them fighting, but as well as their stat resistances of all things. The Nerscylla wearing the skins of Gypceros. Not sure why my camera was freaking out here. I assumed there was a large monster somewhere nearby, causing my camera to zoom in and out dramatically all of a sudden. Very odd. Seeing our character get cold here. I know, given how long we've been traveling, I have the feeling my stamina is getting very low. So we will be taking this heatmate bug to help stave that off. Here we can see a Blangonga and his pack getting very upset about a few Vespoids of all things. And something we don't want to get involved in. Those Vespoids seem to upset them quite a lot because they don't know what they're doing. Blangonga is probably my favorite of the monkeys, though in this game they've made him quite a bit easier compared to his implementation in other games, whereas seen more as a threat and sometimes even a gate to newer players. We're going to see a few Kamakchis running by. Definitely a small monster I would have liked to see a large variation of, as they act quite strange, and even in this location feel very foreign. In these various ruins, we can see scattered rocks floating about due to the magnetism in this location, something the apex of this location takes well advantage of in navigating. Here we have a frenzied Blangonga, somehow even more aggressive. Even if they die in a handful of hits, they are very scary looking. get to see another ancient relic, but of a different culture over here. Just as intricate as the previous. It's interesting to see how quickly they diverse the cultures between just these separate locales that we go to. Even the ones that are long gone from this world. Now we are entering the next transitional area that will lead us to the ancient ruins of Wyveria. The lighting in this location is very well done. Gives vibes of something you might see in a FromSoft game with their various mini castles they like to strewn about in their titles. The scale of this location is absolutely gargantuan. If I remember to do so, I will take an aerial screenshot of it so you can see it from above. The amount of work and detail they put into the diorama version of this is actually insane. It makes me think that maybe they intend to plan a new locale in this location as part of the expansion. Here we have the Gakis. They are very cute. The ones here are more or less just cute versus the variation in the Scarlet Forest, which I feel really fits their motif a lot better in that they're pretending to be flowers in the Scarlet Forest, and they'll capture various little bugs and prey that they can eat. Here, they're just cute, which is fine, I guess. Now we're just going to take a walk through this transitional area. There won't be much to say till we leave it. Just enjoy the massive scale of these ancient ruins as we move along. We're in the ruins of Wyveria and are immediately greeted by the Solanaria, these floating little fragile creatures, reminiscent of something you might see in a deep-sea creature. They are so fragile indeed, their evolution has prepared them for it, and if they are torn apart, even by a small amount, they have very high regenerative abilities and participate in fragmentation, where their bodies can grow from separate pieces. Looking up here, you can see these various cloths dangling all about, though maybe there's some sort of skin or treated flesh from a larger monster. It's really hard to say. Upon closer look, they appear to be cloth, but the way they are placed about in the map implies that they might be more than that. It gives this nice sense of mystery as to whether or not something big might have died here. Maybe the ancient Wyverians were harvesting something from some sort of cattle they kept. Though this is all speculation, which is a fun part of the Monster Hunter games, is they will leave out quite a lot of info that they let the player discover themselves. With this though, it's always good to be careful, as parts of the community tend to take concept art as reality, but the reality is that concept art is just that, and something that is not representative of the fully finished product always. We're going to take a quick pop into the camp, as well as the village of Sild in the back. The placement of these bookshelves is rather odd. I wonder how they are able to even reach these in a reasonable manner. It's surprising that the hunters did not take it upon themselves to grab all these books and begin researching vigorously. I imagine there's quite a lot of old info in these from years past. As we go farther in here, we get to see how the people of Sild have been surviving this entire time. We can see they have been using wilk to help grow their crops in this place that gets very little sunlight exposed to it, as they need to hide from all the extremely dangerous monsters that appear in the ruins of Wyveria. As a result of implementing this wilk into their crops, as a result of the lack of sunlight in this location, and probably in part due to the wilk itself, all of the various crops and vegetables have lost their pigmentation and become this wilky white color. Even the dish here that you get served by Tashin is not the most appetizing looking of things. They really did not do the vegetarians justice in Monster Hunter Wilds compared to some of the other games.
Hello.
We get this beautiful vista of this tree surrounded by all the graves of the people who died here. Strangely, they do not let us walk back in this graveyard. I wonder if this was their way of evading censorship for certain countries, where to go in places like this and have the players walking all over them. Though it could just be they didn't feel like rendering out the rest of the area with terrain and textures. Now we're gonna head our way back. There won't be too much to say until we get closer to the transitional area again.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
And here we can see the Wilk has now flooded this location. I like to imagine this is excess energy from the land spine being extruded here. Though this is just speculation on my. As well as this, we get to see another ancient relic. Take a little look at that real quick. And here you can see why I'm not entirely sure whether or not this is some sort of webbing or a cloth or a refined skin, as its appearance here is quite odd. Here we have a little bump in with a Guardian Rathalos. While the normal Rathalos doesn't bother you too much when you're passing by it, the Guardian one will go out of his way to fight you. Ignore Panini. We're trying to look at these pretty flowers before we go. Now we're entering another part of the ancient city. These ruins always reminded me of the Forlorn Tower seen in previous Monster Hunter games. It made me think that one of these locations would end up being the Forlorn Tower as a final arena or maybe a special battlefield for certain bosses, though that ended up not happening. We're going to be walking for quite a bit again. So, just enjoy the walk. As we get closer to the summit here, you'll see there starts to be snow and ice appearing as the area gets quite cold. And as we pass all this snow and ice, eventually flora will start to bloom, showing that we've gone so high up that there is no longer any place for snow or ice to form and fall down. here in the distance, we can see Suja Peaks of Accord. Here we can see all the downy crakes, a very rare monster in Monster Hunter World, and still quite difficult to catch even in Monster Hunter Wild. In my original practice runs for this, I did pet Poogie, but in this one he was sleeping. There's no way I could wake him up. Look how cute he is.
Here's what you asked for.
We are finally in our final destination, the Grand Tub, and we happen to be greeted by the Blossom event. one of the more pretty seasonal events for the Gathering Hub. We'll take a quick little walk around, but I feel most people have thoroughly explored this location.
Ira, Fanabolti Finae.
Heritage Abu Dhabi.
We finally made it. That was a very long walk. If you're still awake, thank you for watching. Up here, another walk along video. Down here, another video. Over here, subscribe. And thank you for watching. Thank you as well to my members. Remember, members are an optional thing on my channel, and it's just an additional way for you to support me. Bye-bye!